3, 2, 1.
Hey everyone, I'm Daniel.
Hi everyone, I'm Yuka.
What are we going to do today, honey?
We're gonna do the reaction video 12 Things Not to Do in Japan.
By Chris Broad, abroad in Japan. I've been watching his videos for a couple years now.
Yeah, he's very popular.
I really enjoyed a series that he did where he was traveling across Japan by bicycle and... Kankan, what are you doing? Kankan desu.
Hello!
So, yes,
行きましょう.
let's go.
I won't lie, I didn't know a whole lot about Japan before I got here. I knew what Pikachu was, and I'd seen The Last Samurai about 3 times, and that was probably the extent of my knowledge. I actually did most of my reading about Japanese etiquette on the horrific 12-hour flight between London and Tokyo, and I've pretty much just winged it ever since. In hindsight, there are a lot of things I know now that I would have done well to comprehend before I got here. So today, I've taken 5 years of experience in the field and compiled it into this list of 12 things not to do in Japan. So when you're on your flight here, you needn't worry about reading about cultural etiquette. You can sit back, relax, and enjoy the in-flight entertainment with incredible titles to choose from, such as The Emoji Movie, Valerian and the City of 1,000 Disappointments, Ace Detective Sherlock Bones. And I think we can all agree, of those 3 movies, the most compelling would have to be Sherlock Bones, Ace Detective. Especially with that brilliant tagline, the world's first talking police dog on a mission impossible. Mission impossible. It doesn't really work, does it? At all. So walking down the street whilst eating and drinking isn't illegal. You're not going to get shouted at and you're not going to get arrested by Ace Detective Sherlock Bones. But what you will get is the stare of disapproval. A lot of people don't know this one until you get here and never see anyone doing it. What you'll find is if someone wants to eat or drink something quickly outside, they'll buy it at the convenience store and then eat it or drink it out the front. Same with vending machines. If they buy something from the vending machine, they'll drink it there and then next to the vending machine. The main reason is people are very conscious about keeping the streets clean here, and you don't want to ruin someone else's day by having them walk through your spilt coffee. That said, all you need to do to avoid the stare of disapproval is just stop and eat and drink whatever it is there and then. Maybe it's on a bench, maybe you're just standing at the side of the road, whatever. Just don't walk whilst eating and drinking and you'll be alright.
I don't know if I 100% agree with that, because like we kind of eat and drink while we're walking quite regularly when we're in Japan, because we're always sort of in a real rush when we're in Japan. We've got so many things to do, so we'll just quickly nip into a combini like 7-Eleven, Lawson or Family Mart just to grab something to drink and some onigiri rice balls, pocky or something like that we can just quickly eat.
When we went to the a summer festival,
everybody's just eating and
a
drinking.
lot like skewered.
Yeah, kebabs
So
and stuff
it's
like that.
depend on the place and time. So even nobody doesn't care about it, but they feel guilty to do it sometimes. So they're kind of hiding kuso eat or kuso eat.
When you arrive at a station, there's always a little kiosk on the platform sometimes at some of the larger stations, and there's people standing around, like they'll buy something and then while they're waiting for the train to arrive, they'll just rip open whatever they bought and they'll just eat it while they're waiting for the train to come.
A lot of Japanese people being told by parents, don't eat while you are standing or walking.
I would say that definitely don't eat on a train. That's like an etiquette no-no. Look at him, he put his chopsticks in the rice.
Have you ever done that before?
I'm pretty sure I've never done it, because before I went to Japan, I've done a bit of research reading the Lonely Planet Guide to Japan. That's one of the first things that they say.
What he said?
Never put chopsticks in the rice, because it is deeply offensive to Japanese, because that particular tradition reminds people of funerals.
When people have a funeral, they prepare the rice on the bowl and then put it in chopsticks like this. That's food for someone passed away.
3 things to point out here. Number 1, never put your chopsticks upright into the rice, as this is part of a ritual conducted at funerals when offering rice to the spirits of the deceased. Similarly, number 2, never pass things from chopstick to chopstick, because again, this is done during funerals to pass the bones of cremated relatives, so that kind of imagery doesn't go down well over dinner, as you'd expect. Probably best not to conjure up imagery surrounding death before you've even had your lunch. Oh, and thirdly, don't do the rubbing of the chopsticks. You know when you open wooden chopsticks, you like to do that to get rid of the splinters, and just because it's fun. Everyone loves doing that, right? But don't do it in Japan because it's seen as rude to the owner, because you're basically saying, oh, your chopsticks are probably cheap, which, let's face it, they probably are. In fact, they usually definitely are.
Doing that gets all those splinters off so that then you don't get splinters in your hand.
So I learned how to do it like this. But is it rude? I don't think so. But you can do this. And in like a Japanese funeral, use chopsticks for passing the bone. But that's quite traumatic for children these days.
These days? I think any day.
Any days, yes.
Normally, if people are cremated, like you don't even get the bones, right?
Yeah, but Japan leave the bone.
Does it
Because
mean that
they
don't
want to put it under
cremate
a
them?
little bit of the bone to the jar, right?
Japanese cremation is a different temperature. They don't crank it up to 11 or something to turbo.
Normally it takes
Cremate?
time.
Tip!
Probably the
No
greatest
tipping.
thing about Japan ever, and the reason that I eat out several times a week, just because I save 20% automatically. In Japan, it's believed that customer service should always be exceptional, with staff giving 120% every time. 120%? 110%? 120% would be ridiculous. But it's not necessarily rude to tip someone, it just creates this awkward situation where the worker, the staff, would feel like you're assessing their performance and they could potentially lose face. So you might think you're being nice by giving someone a tip, but you're not. You're just creating an uncomfortable situation for the worker, and they'll probably just reject your tip outright. So don't be tempted to do it.
Daniel doesn't like tipping. I mean, everyone doesn't like tipping.
Yeah, that's definitely something I really hate about traveling to the US. Even in the UK as well, they've started introducing tipping culture in pubs and bars and restaurants. Fortunately, New Zealand doesn't have a tipping culture. Sometimes they'll have a tip jar at the counter when you're paying for your bill, but that's generally just used for people to throw in some spare change if they don't want to carry coins around.
I think the Japanese people want to be accurate after their job done, right? Otherwise, all the money is just
So when they're closing up the till,
closing up the
right?
till.
So they'll go, okay, we sold this, and this. I'm like, oh, we've got too much money. Oh no, what do I do with the extra money?
1 cent less, and then they need to find
The Japanese IRS.
tax department.
Yeah, what's the...
Tax department. I'm
Oh,
not
come
really
on.
sure.
Tips are good as a reward for exceptional service. If you're just overwhelmed by the incredible service you've had, then if you are at a fancy restaurant or a very exclusive bar, then if you're just overwhelmed by the incredible service you've had, then you would be able to count how many staff are in there, and then you tip everybody instead of just tipping the person that
if
served
we
you,
did
because
it
then it's fair.
Yeah, so
right?
if we did it to one person and then
Other people will
People
feel bad.
feel-
Oh man, I'm stuck here slaving away in the kitchen, cutting all the sashimi, and I did all the hard prep work.
Yeah.
And then the person who's just like folding it
so people
at the
doesn't-
counter is getting all the benefit. How they normally do it, I think, in the US and the UK is that all of the tips for the night or for that particular shift would be collected, and then
they're
they
gonna-
just collect all of it, total it all up, and then split it between all the staff. Like when we went to Hawaii, I went and got a haircut, and after my haircut, I paid by my credit card, and then it came up with a suggested tip, and it was like 40% of my like $150 haircut and for like a close razor shave. So like 40% of $150, that's like $60
Yeah.
to tip a person that I've already paid $150 for the service. The guy cutting my hair and shaving my face, he's not going to get $60.
Yeah, we can talk
So-
about tips.
Oh man,
all
I could
night.
go on about tipping culture all night.
One of our friends said that even though Japan is a kind of country that we want to give them a tip because they are very nice and kind and
Omotenashi. Great service.
Great service, but they don't accept the tip, which is quite sad things for the customer.
The customer wants to give them a tip.
Yeah, because they did a great job.
It's rejected. Yeah. So then it sort of makes them feel bad for offering or wanting to reward the waiter or the waitress
for the good service. But sometimes we need to pay a tip even though that was not really great service.
So I think it just comes down to the custom. So if it's not the established custom to tip in Japan, then don't tip in Japan. I like it, and I agree with Chris that not having to tip sort of incentivizes us to go out and eat more often because it's just automatically 20%, 30% cheaper. So at the end of the day, your supply of money is still being distributed to other restaurants, or you might spend 30% extra than you would normally spend because you're having such a great time, right? So then you would buy 1 or 2 extra beers,
or they're going to come back to that restaurant more often, so then we can have a win-win situation.
That.
There's a real emphasis on being mindful when you're using public transport in Japan that's often completely absent in many countries. Numerous of the times that I've been riding a train in the UK and someone nearby has been screaming at their partner down the phone, and I felt like I was part of the argument, like some kind of unpleasant 4D experience. But given Japan's density, it's especially important to be mindful when you're stuffed in a train alongside fellow commuters, many of whom are sleeping as well. With that in mind, don't ever talk on your phone on the train. That's a massive no thing to do here, and even talking loudly is looked down upon. If you're on a local train or a subway train and you get a phone call, just ignore it until you get off. And if you're on a bullet train, you can go to the little compartment in between the carriages and take your call there.
It's quite funny, a couple of times when we've been on a train, I noticed that you actually just answered the phone and then you're like and basically whispering and...
No, I said to them, I'm on the train right now, so I'll call you back later. And then that's, I think a lot of people do that too, because sometimes it's kind of rude to not to get the phone as well if it's important. But you've been waiting for the call a long time, and it suddenly happened on the train, and then you cannot get off the train, right? So the people can understand if you did like this, and then you can just hang the phone after a few seconds.
But in Japan though, normally if you're on the train and it's not crazy busy, but everybody tends to be wearing headphones anyway, so they're listening to music.
I thought that why we cannot use the phone on the train because the signal is not good for the someone who are wearing
a pacemaker.
That was I was told by someone. Then,
oh my gosh!
But that's false information.
Yeah.
Is it?
What are the chances that you're gonna be sitting next to someone who has a very old pacemaker or something like that, and you're gonna kill someone because you answered your phone?
Me too, because
that's
if
so
someone
weird.
had a pacemaker, then they cannot use their phone. That's really weird, isn't it? But close to the priority seat, it said the time of your phone. People cannot use the phone.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
I guess it's sort of a little bit like if on airplanes that have Wi-Fi enabled flights. So they're very particular that you can use your phone, you can use your device, you can browse the internet, you can watch videos and stuff through headphones. Because you're in a closed space, they still prohibit talking or making Skype calls or WhatsApp calls or Facebook Messenger calls or Line calls, right? Just because you're in a closed space and you need to be mindful of all of the other people who have paid substantial amounts of money to be flying internationally or domestically, right? So you're much more likely to disturb other people who are in a closed space.
I didn't know that. I thought that's also kind of connecting to the signal of the flight.
Well,
these days it's changed.
Maybe in the early days of mobile phones coming around, that was it. But now interference is not really a deciding factor for banning cell phone use on planes.
Also, Japanese people doesn't like the woman put it on the makeup on the train. I saw that some signs said that don't put it on the makeup. It's not good manner. If you want to put it on the makeup, then you can put it on makeup at the house.
People are waking up at 5:30 a.m. to catch the first train.
Yeah, they need to put it on the makeup because in Japan, like a Japanese woman tend to care about their beauty more than other countries.
But who do you think is more likely to get offended by people putting makeup on? Young teenagers? Are they going to be like angry if they see?
I don't think so. I think
like,
a little bit elder
other teenagers
women
doing it? Yeah, so it's
elder
really
people.
only going to be the elderly people who are like, oh, this young generation now, they've got no respect.
For the public space. The younger people doesn't really care much in the more they relax.
I remember for the first few years that I lived here, whenever someone handed me a business card, I was utterly terrified because until then, business cards to me had always just been a bit of paper or a bit of card with some writing on. But in Japan, they are so much more. Once you've exchanged business cards, the trick is to imagine you've just been handed the lost treasure of El Salvador or something. First, study it meticulously, the name, the job position, the details. And then either put it in your business card holder or just put it on the desk if you're at a business meeting. You put it on the table. Never play around with business cards or put them in your back pocket because they're seen as a physical extension of the person themselves, and you don't want to stuff somebody's physical extension down your back pocket. If you're doing business in Japan, always carry business cards. You don't want to be that awkward foreigner who stood there writing out their name and number 50 times in 1 hour on the back of a tissue. And for the record, I am usually that awkward foreigner scribbling down my details because I do forget to bring them, and subsequently I hate myself when it happens.
ダニエルさん、はじめまして。ゆかと申します。
はい、よろしくお願いします。Yuka-san, sugoi director. I've been in a couple of situations at business functions here in PNG where I've just run out of cards and I always feel really kind of awkward, but I don't want to stoop so low as to like write my name and number on a napkin. What Chris is saying about business cards is very true. It is very important to respect the card. Like there's kind of a formal tradition of receiving a business card from someone and of giving a business card to someone. So when you're giving it, you're holding two corners and then the other person is holding the opposite two corners and then they grasp it and then you release.
If you've got a runny nose, standard procedure here is just to keep sniffing, or just to find a toilet or a broom cupboard to hide in. Blowing noses in public is pretty rude. Interestingly though, handkerchiefs are pretty popular here. Not in the way you would think though. People use them to wipe sweat off in the hot summer weather, or even more commonly to dry their hands in public toilets. Because surprisingly, many public toilets in Japan don't have any hand drying facilities, despite having space-age toilets that reside in the same room. It's quite a weird contrast that I don't quite understand.
That is
Can you find it?
very weird. Often in Japanese public toilets, they will just have taps which are generally icy cold, and then they'll have a soap dispenser and then no way to dry your hands. Unless you're in like a more upmarket shopping centre or you're in Ginza or Omotesando. They don't really have disposable hand towels.
But I think these days it's getting more, there are a lot of hand towel, like especially for this time, you know? But a lot of Japanese people bring their own handkerchief with them.
Definitely been on many trains where someone's just like and I'm just like, oh my gosh, please blow your nose.
The blowing sound, Japanese people doesn't like it. Yeah, burping sound is very rude, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of same as the burping sound.
Kind of universal burping.
Really? But Japanese people doesn't really care about the burping sound, but they care about this
blowing your nose
blowing
sound.
sound.
So do you think it's a hygiene thing?
The sound by this red on the train.
Don't get
Physical contact in Japan isn't really a thing. You'll bow a lot, you'll nod enthusiastically daily, but occasionally you might shake hands with someone if they're a good friend or a business client that you get on well with. But generally, I avoid it unless someone makes the first move. And hugging in particular doesn't go down well. It's just met with expressions of awkwardness and despair. And also, amongst couples, public displays of affection are phenomenally rare here. So don't be surprised if you get the stare of disapproval if you're kissing your partner frantically in the street. And
kissing frantically in the street.
I don't really mind though. Yeah, but a lot of Japanese people doesn't like it.
I just feel awkward that they're seeing an intimate moment of someone else, maybe.
I'm gonna show off. But I think a lot of Japanese people like to hug for the greetings a lot.
Yeah, I think it's getting a little bit more common. I think it really depends on how close a friend you are.
Yes.
So if
And
you're
so shake a hand is okay
Yeah.
for the business as well?
yeah, you wouldn't like high five your boss or like go in
Yeah.
for a group hug or
guess-
something unless
yeah.
you're at like maybe a group party or something, nomikai kind of thing.
Yeah, but you better to be careful that if you do to
Someone of the opposite gender.
that
Yeah.
must be a little bit, it's not only in Japan. I think a lot of countries also have sometimes they have problem.
With like sexual harassment.
Yeah. So, but normally
things like
for
that.
greeting with your friend, people like that.
But I have noticed that it sort of depends on if the Japanese person you're meeting has lived overseas. If they've lived overseas, then they're so much more open to that kind of more Western style of greeting.
Be someone who's never been outside of Japan, they might a little bit surprised this greeting. But it's quite good culture exchange.
I don't think I've ever seen them kind of be like
Awkward.
frozen, kind of like.
What do you think of bowing?
Bowing culture is like just everywhere in Japan. At the stores, all the shop staff will like bow to you, or they'll just yell out "Irashimasu!" Into the konbini or
True.
department stores like Mitsukoshi, they'll actually
It's cushy.
deeply bow to you. Or if you buy some clothes from a store after you've paid, even buying coffee capsules from the Nespresso store, they will nicely pack it into the box, and then the shop clerk will actually carry the bag out to the door, and then they'll hand it to you, then you'll receive it, and then they'll deeply bow, and they'll stay bowed down until you get the hell out of the way. Right? That's really funny, and like I feel really awkward. I'm like walking, and then I'll quickly turn around and see them, and it's still bowed. And then I'll sort of take 1 or 2 steps, and then quickly, and it's still bowed.
I think you should just go.
I'm kind of thinking in the back of my head, oh my gosh, they're probably like side-eyeing me. Has he gone yet? Has he gone yet?
And I think that it should definitely be this.
Don't
If you're the
be
sort of
overly
person who feels the
opinionated.
need to have a debate or an argument about things or throw your opinions out there constantly, people will find you obnoxious and dislikable and probably just avoid you. Embedded heavily within the culture is this idea of keeping harmony and avoiding conflict at all costs. And it's a lot easier to do that when people aren't at each other's throats, throwing around opinions. Sometimes it can be frustrating when people are just unwilling to speak their minds or give you a clear yes or no answer. I mean, one time, one of my colleagues when I was teaching, I asked him, "Do you have any pets?" And he said to me, "Maybe my cat is dead."
Maybe my cat
Maybe your
is
cat
dead.
is dead. What does that mean? It is dead or is it not dead? It's not Schrodinger's cat, is it? It turned out the cat was definitely dead, but he was just the sort of person that always liked to use the word maybe and just not express certainty. But if there's one reason I've never seen a fight anywhere in Japan in the last 5 years, it's probably this reason. That people are a lot more careful about expressing their opinions and holding back what they really think.
Do you have a cat?
Yes, I've got 3 cats. Kimi-chan, Ken-ken, Midori. I love my cats.
But I can understand that a lot of Japanese people are a little bit afraid of showing their opinion.
Or sharing too much personal information. Maybe in Chris's example, if he's a senpai, senior teacher, then he's not wanting to get down on the same level as Chris. So he's just being very strict about maintaining those social boundaries, the unspoken boundaries.
But just
I'm
as a cats or not.
Yeah, that seems
But
like
this
a
is maybe
very...
for the example. A lot of Japanese people doesn't train to show their opinion, to share with somebody. Like having an opinion feels not really good. Same as a peer pressure.
Who feels bad? Like if you have an opinion, do you feel bad for telling other people your opinion in case they don't share that opinion and would get offended? Or like if you say, oh man, I really love wearing red. I look so beautiful in this red shirt today. And then
I thought
if
this
you
is
say
not
that-
suit on you.
Yeah.
But I cannot say, oh, this is not suit on you.
so what would you say? You'd say like,
Yeah.
sticky.
Especially if you
Chopstick.
are my senpai or boss, and then but that's kind of same
Yeah.
things, right? My point is that a lot of Japanese people doesn't want to show or share their opinion with somebody who really can't
Trust.
Japanese culture has honne and tatemae. The honne is personal feelings, and tatemae is public stance. If you are mother or if you're both, they need to
Have a society position, right? So that's where
Very
they stand in
important for
society, and that's how they have to be very responsible and act like a boss should act.
yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't be bothered to film that one. Everyone seems to know this one already anyway. When visiting someone's house or entering a public building like a school or going to a hot spring, you take off your shoes and switch to slippers before you go in. The easiest way of knowing if you have to change your shoes is there'll be a change in elevation in the floor. So when you go in, there'll be a little stair, and that's when you know. This is the one thing on the list where failing to stick to the rules will have noticeable results. A few years ago, a friend and I visited a public bathhouse in Kyoto, and we went in, and you're supposed to take your shoes off. For some reason he didn't. I don't know why. I don't think he noticed or saw. There was a little old woman sitting behind the entrance counter where you kind of pay, and when we walked in, she saw that he still had his shoes on, and she shot up with terrifying energy and ran over and grabbed him and took him to the front and was like, get your shoes off, get your shoes off. And that image has stayed burnt into my mind. This quiet little old woman suddenly becoming so alive and animated by this terrible event. And ever since then, I've never forgotten to take my shoes off when entering a building.
And we went to the onsen. The genkan, the step was only a really small step, right? So I didn't mentally recognize it as genkan. I didn't take my shoes off, and the lady quickly turned around and was like, no shoes. And I was like, oh, sumimasen, gomenasai. But there is a couple of times where I'm at your brother's house. I've just got dressed and put my shoes on, and we've gone outside and locked up the front door, and then I'm like, damn it, I forgot something. I rushed inside. I didn't take my shoes off, but I like hobbled along on my knees.
There's a lot of Japanese people
So that I didn't have to take my shoes off, because it was a real hassle to take my shoes off, because I had my gloves on, I was wearing long trousers, and my laces were
complicated.
yeah. So I think that's why it's very common in Japan, or you sort of start to see a lot more frequently, is slip-on shoes. So they're easy to take off, and then it's just like not really an excuse. You don't have to bend down and undo your laces.
For whatever reason, rubbish bins and trash cans are disturbingly rare in Japan. Outside of convenience stores, it can be a nightmare to find one. And the reason I put this on the list is because so many people, so many of you guys message me on Twitter saying, I'm in Tokyo and I can't find a bin, what should I do? I've wandered through Tokyo for up to 20 minutes sometimes, just in search of a bin, and can't find one. The streets though, despite that, are shockingly clean here, because people, if they can't find a bin, they just take the rubbish home with them. It can feel like some kind of mini game sometimes, going in search for a bin, because when you do find a bin you feel a real sense of achievement. But despite that, don't be tempted to litter. Just keep trying and you'll find a bin one day.
Yeah, I have done this many times, searching for a bin, and I'm like, where's the nearest convenience store? Because generally there are always rubbish bins outside convenience stores.
I kind of realized something, that people should not eat while they are walking, because also they cannot find the bin on the street.
Yeah, but if they have a little bag,
Yeah.
then they put the trash into the little bag that they bought the goods in from the combini, but then they have to just carry the plastic bag around until they find another combini.
Yeah, but that's not good for the environment, isn't it? Do you know why there's not much trash bin like Australia or other country?
Too many tanuki and stray cats.
Yeah. Actually, like a few years ago,
Oh yeah,
accident happened.
The bomb or racing.
Yeah,
or
there was
something.
terror attack or sad accident. So it's just in case they don't want to put the trash bin much on the street.
But that's something that's quite interesting, is that in Japan they haven't really embraced the whole eco bag.
They
right?
started.
But everything is so much packaging. in Japan,
Yeah, the
right?
packaging is a huge problem. Like, a lot of tourists came to Japan and they're surprised that just the tiny things they are wrapped up with the plastic. It's not good for the environment.
I do this.
Seems
all
like
the
a
time.
fairly obvious addition to the list, and
Don't
yet in the
cross
UK
over
we
it.
just cross the street whenever the hell we want, whenever there's an opening in traffic, as opposed to waiting for the green light, same as many countries. In Japan, however, people do not cross the road on a red light. It's incredibly rare, and it's one of the greatest ways of seeing this sense of order and obedience to the law that exists in Japan. If you stand at a roadside in Japan and there's no cars coming, you can't see any cars whatsoever, people still will not cross the road until it goes green. Over the years of the many friends I've had come to visit me here, this is the thing that shocks them the most. The idea of not crossing the street when there's no visible cars there. The idea of abiding by a rule that doesn't seem necessary. And yet for me personally, the main reason I abide by it is after a few years of being here, you don't want to stand out. You don't want to be this stereotypical rule-breaking foreigner. And as well as that, you don't want to run the risk of getting caught out by the police. So those are two things worth taking into consideration before you dash across the seemingly empty road.
I kind of do this a lot.
Daniel
and
does a lot of this.
there's this
breaking rule
really
things.
annoying street in Omotesando, like right next to the Apple store. It's only sort of like a mini street, but it has
Yeah, I know,
across
I know, I know.
It's
I
so
know that.
stupid. During the day, there's never any cars ever go down that street because it's kind of it's so rare. It's not even 5 meters, 3 meters wide. It's such a narrow
I
street.
know.
It's kind of more of an alley. It always annoys me when I'm walking with Yuka and we're trying to cross over this street. Yuka will always stop, and I would just like generally 9 times out of 10 always cross over that road.
Because when I went back to Japan, I changed to the Japanese mode to be more
Following the rules.
following the rule. A lot of Japanese people is trained to follow the rule. The rule is everything for anything. It's
Even
not
if the rule doesn't really make a
really
lot of
make-
sense,
yes.
because like
It's not like-
everybody in Japan is always in such a hurry.
think about it. Why Japan is keep it clean environment or much safer than the other country? Because people are following the rule most of the time. It's quite not flexible.
I think your point you're trying to say is more that Japanese are very inflexible when it comes to bending rules.
That's it.
Westerners tend to be like Kiwis and Australians. We tend to be a lot more flexible,
Yeah.
right? Like, okay, I'll just turn a blind eye. I'm not talking about it's just the Wild West cowboy town where people can just do whatever the hell they want, right? Like, there's good rules, there's bad rules, and
The
if you-
grey rules.
grey rules.
But when you went
Right.
to Japan, you better to be careful about the rule. I think there's more respect to the other country to visit, right? If we need to wear something, we need to hide skin or something, we're gonna wear it. It doesn't make sense to us, but that's more respect to the country to visit.
Yeah, but in those countries like Dubai and things like that, if your woman have to be covered up, like if you don't get covered up, the police will actually arrest you.
Yeah,
right?
that's
Like the
not
consequences
great.
are a
That's-
lot more severe.
But Japanese doesn't say no, so that's why we have to be careful.
Well,
Nobody
it's
tell you.
it's kind of like at concerts, taking photos and videos. I remember when we were at Coldplay concert, they were kind of strict in the stadium about no photography, no filming. But then we went to another Japanese concert for Kyari Panyu Panyu, and then everybody was filming.
If they said it's not okay, then we should not in Japan. But in other country like Australia, we do whatever we can do, and then
Yeah.
it's more flexible.
And the last one, don't worry about not knowing anything about Japanese etiquette when you come to Japan.
Don't
As I said
worry
earlier in
about
this video, there aren't going to be any real consequences to not following any of these things, apart from maybe the footwear one. That's quite scary. You don't want to get dragged off by an old woman. The reason I say don't worry too much is because I find a lot of people come here and they're very nervous and very anxious about following the etiquette they don't really comprehend. And that includes even me. When I came here, I didn't know anything. And I was constantly anxious and nervous that I was making mistakes. But really, as a foreigner in Japan, you get a kind of a free pass to make mistakes. People are understanding and they're kind and they will let you off. So don't become too nervous about following all the rules. Do your best, but don't become a nervous wreck. So those are my 12 things not to do in Japan. But what have I missed out? Let us know in the comments section below. I've probably missed out. Don't ever be late. And don't enter a bath or a hot spring without having a shower first. Those are probably the other 2 key ones I've missed out. And now they're on the list. So this is actually 14 things not to do in Japan. So bonus stuff there. It's Christmas, so you get extra content.
Happy Christmas. So is this Christmas? The happy you done, you ended one, what of the area?
Yeah, true.
So
it's
it's basically life, right? When you're living in a city with 37.4 million people in 2020.
Central current
Metro area.
population of Tokyo. Wow, that's a lot.
That's a lot of people. So there's a lot of things that can go wrong.
It was
So-
funny that your dad told us that JR or something apologized to the people because train left earlier.
So there's a rule for the JR is that if the train is longer than 5 or 10 minutes late, then they have to issue certificates to the people on the train who were late
And
due
they
to
need
problems.
to show to
So it's sort of like a medical certificate. Oh, I'm so sorry I'm late. Here's my JR proof that it actually happened. I'm not lying. Yep, I think that was a pretty good video of Christmas.
It was
It's
very
entertaining,
interesting.
very unique to Japan. You can kind of get away with not following most of these things in pretty much
Yeah,
any
so
other country.
as Chris
like-
said, yeah, you don't have to worry about to make a mistake.
So, that brings us to the end of another video. Hope you enjoyed it. What do you think? Have you been to Japan and experienced any things in Japan that were okay to do in your country but then were sort of frowned upon in Japan? Let us know in the comments below. If you like our content, then please smash that like button. Click the subscribe button. Click it. Click it now, please. Clickety clickety click. No. Actually, just click it once, because if you clickety click,
We
you'll
are
click and
watching.
unsubscribe. And ring the bell for the notifications. And if you have any nice feedback for us, then please share it in the comments down below. And if you're really lucky, we'll give you a heart. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Bye.